June 4, 1993. Seattle Police Department. At 11:47 p.m., officers responded to a domestic disturbance call at 171 Lake Washington Boulevard, Kurt Cobain's lakefront home. What they found when they arrived would lead to one of the most bizarre arrests in rock history and reveal a side of Kurt's relationship with Courtney Love that the public had never seen before. The call had come from a neighbor who reported hearing violent arguing, crashing sounds, and a woman screaming for help coming from the Cobain residence. Officer Patricia Williams and her partner, Sergeant Michael Chen, expected to find a typical domestic violence situation. Instead, they discovered something that would make headlines around the world and leave both officers questioning everything they thought they knew about celebrity relationships. Kurt answered the door wearing nothing but boxer shorts and a Melvins t-shirt, his hair disheveled and his face flushed. Behind him, the living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Furniture was overturned, books were scattered across the floor, and what appeared to be the remains of several guitars lay smashed against the walls. "Everything's fine, officers," Kurt said, trying to block their view of the destruction behind him. "Just a little disagreement about creative differences." But Courtney Love's voice could be heard from somewhere in the house, and she was clearly not fine. "Kurt to Donald Cobain, you get back in here right now," she screamed. "We are not finished discussing this." Officer Williams pushed past Kurt into the house following department protocol for domestic disturbance calls. What she found in the living room defied all expectations. Courtney Love was standing on the couch wearing a wedding dress that was covered in what appeared to be chocolate cake, holding a baseball bat over her head. "Ma'am, I need you to put down the bat," Williams said carefully. "It's not a real bat," Courtney replied, matter-of-factly. "It's a prop from my movie, and I'm not putting it down until Kurt admits he was wrong." Sergeant Chen, who had been examining the destruction, looked up from what appeared to be the remnants of a very expensive guitar. "Mr. Cobain, did your wife attack you with this bat?" Kurt looked embarrassed. "She didn't attack me, she attacked my guitars." "Your guitars?" "All of them," Kurt confirmed. "She smashed every guitar in the house because I did something really stupid." What Kurt had done, according to the police report that was finally released 30 years later, was one of the most bizarre acts of rockstar rebellion anyone had ever documented. Earlier that evening, Kurt and Courtney had been preparing for a magazine photo shoot scheduled for the next day. The photographer wanted to capture them as the perfect grunge couple tell. Kurt with his guitar, Courtney in her vintage wedding dress, both looking effortlessly cool and romantic. But Kurt had decided to play what he thought would be a harmless prank. While Courtney was getting her hair done, he had secretly replaced all of his expensive professional guitars with cheap toy instruments from a local music store. His plan was to see how long it would take the photographer to notice that he was posing with a plastic Fisher-Price guitar. "I thought it would be funny," Kurt told the officers. "You know this whole thing about authenticity in music, and here I am posing with a toy guitar. I thought Courtney would laugh." Courtney Love did not laugh. "He made me look like an idiot," Courtney explained to Officer Williams, still holding the prop bat. "I'm standing there in this beautiful vintage dress, trying to look serious and artistic, and my husband is playing air guitar on a children's toy." The photographer thought we were making fun of the whole concept of the shoot, but the story got stranger. When Courtney discovered Kurt's prank, she had retaliated by doing something even more bizarre. She had taken all of Kurt's real guitar's instruments worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and hidden them throughout Seattle. She gave them to random people. Kurt told Sergeant Chen. "She walked down to Pike Place Market and started handing out my guitars to street musicians. She gave my 1965 Jaguar to a guy playing folk songs outside Starbucks." "Ma'am, is this true?" Officer Williams asked Courtney. "Completely true," Courtney confirmed proudly. "If Kurt wants to treat his music like a joke, then maybe other people should have a chance to make real music with his instruments." The officers were struggling to understand exactly what crime had been committed. The guitars belonged to Kurt, so Courtney couldn't be charged with theft. Kurt hadn't actually been assaulted, so there was no domestic violence. And the property damage to the house seemed to be the result of Kurt's tantrum when he discovered his guitars were missing, not Courtney's bat-wielding. "So let me get this straight," Sergeant Chen said. "Mr. Cobain, you replaced your real guitars with toys as a prank. Mrs. Cobain, you responded by giving away all his real guitars to strangers, and then you, Mr. Cobain, destroyed your own furniture when you found out. That's pretty much it," Kurt admitted. "And the chocolate cake?" Officer Williams asked, gesturing to Courtney's dress. "That was Kurt," Courtney explained. He threw it at me when he realized I'd given away his '59 Les Paul. She ducked. Kurt added defensively. I wasn't actually trying to hit her with cake, I was just expressing frustration. The officers looked at each other. In 15 years of police work, neither had encountered anything quite like this situation. The arrest came about because of what happened next. While the officers were trying to sort out the details of this surreal domestic dispute, Kurt made a decision that would land him in handcuffs. You know what? Kurt announced suddenly. If Courtney can give away my guitars, then I can give away her stuff too. Before anyone could stop him, Kurt ran upstairs and began throwing Courtney's clothes out of their bedroom window into Lake Washington. Designer dresses, vintage coats, expensive shoes, everything went flying into the water. Kurt, stop, Courtney screamed, dropping her prop bat and running after him. But Kurt was on a roll. Next came Courtney's jewelry box, her makeup collection, and finally, her collection of vintage movie posters, some of which were worth more than the guitars she had given away. That's destruction of property, Officer Williams announced, following the trail of expensive items floating in the lake. Mr. Cobain, you're under arrest. The charges were officially listed as malicious mischief in the 3rd degree and reckless endangerment, the latter because some of the thrown items had nearly hit a jogger who was passing by on the lakefront path. As Kurt was being handcuffed, Courtney made one final dramatic gesture. She grabbed the Fisher-Price guitar that had started the whole incident and threw it as hard as she could into the lake. There, she announced. Now we're even. The booking process at the Seattle Police Department was unlike anything the officers had ever experienced. Kurt remained cooperative, but kept asking if someone could help him retrieve his guitars from the street musicians who now owned them. Do you think that folksinger is taking good care of my Jaguar? He asked Officer Williams during the paperwork process. Courtney, who had come to the station to bail Kurt out, was still wearing her cake-covered wedding dress and complaining that the chocolate stains were never going to come out. This dress is from 1943, she told anyone who would listen. It's a genuine wartime vintage piece, and now it's ruined because my husband has the emotional maturity of a 5-year-old. The media attention was immediate and intense. By morning, reporters had gathered outside the police station, the Cobain home, and Pike Place Market, where they were interviewing the lucky street musicians who had received free guitars from one of rock's biggest stars. The folk singer who had received Kurt's 1965 Jaguar told a local news crew, "This lady in a wedding dress just walked up to me and said, 'Here, you probably deserve this more than my husband does.' I thought it was some kind of joke until I realized it was a real Fender." Kurt's arrest became a tabloid sensation, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Instead of being portrayed as a story of domestic violence or rock star excess, it became an oddly endearing tale of a couple whose relationship was so intense that even their fights were creative and theatrical. Rolling Stone magazine ran a cover story titled "Love and War," inside Kurt and Courtney's bizarre domestic life. The article painted the incident as evidence of two artistic personalities who were so passionate about their relationship that they couldn't even argue in conventional ways. Most couples fight about money or jealousy, the article noted. Kurt and Courtney fight about authenticity and artistic integrity, and they use their most prized possessions as weapons in these battles. The legal consequences were minimal. Kurt paid fines for the property damage and was required to attend anger management counseling, which he later said was actually helpful for dealing with the pressures of fame. The couple retrieved most of the guitars from their new owners, though several of the street musicians had become so attached to the instruments that Kurt ended up buying them cheaper replacement guitars and letting them keep his expensive ones. "Those musicians probably appreciate those guitars more than I did," Kurt told MTV News weeks later. Maybe Courtney had the right idea. The incident became part of Kurt and Courtney's legend, evidence of a relationship that was passionate, unpredictable, and utterly unique. Friends of the couple said the guitar incident was typical of how they interacted. Everything was dramatic, nothing was conventional, and somehow they always managed to turn even their worst fights into opportunities for unexpected generosity. Years later, Courtney would describe the arrest as one of her favorite memories of their marriage. "That night showed me that Kurt and I were perfectly matched," she reflected. "We were both crazy enough to turn a stupid prank into a citywide art installation. Most couples would have just had a normal fight and gotten over it. We created performance art." But the full story of that bizarre June night extends far beyond what made it into the initial police reports. The aftermath of Kurt's arrest would reveal even more surprising details about the couple's unconventional relationship and their impact on Seattle's music scene. The street musicians who had received Kurt's guitars became overnight celebrities in their own right. Jake Morrison, the folk singer who had been given the 1965 Jaguar, found himself booked solid for weeks as curious music fans flocked to Pike Place Market to hear Kurt Cobain's guitar being played by someone else. The incident also revealed the depth of Kurt and Courtney's integration into Seattle's artistic community. Over the following weeks, it came to light that Courtney hadn't randomly selected street musicians to receive the guitars. She had specifically chosen performers she and Kurt had been quietly supporting for months. Detective Sharon Rodriguez, who had been assigned to follow up on the case, discovered that the Cobains had been making anonymous donations to struggling local artists long before the guitar incident. We found receipts showing that they had been paying rent for several musicians, buying groceries for artists' families, even covering medical bills, Rodriguez explained. The guitar giveaway wasn't just revenge, it was Courtney's way of making their private charity public. This revelation cast the entire incident in a different light. What had seemed like an impulsive act of marital revenge was actually a continuation of the couple's systematic support of Seattle's underground music scene. The media coverage took some unexpected turns. Instead of focusing solely on the couple's eccentric behavior, several outlets began investigating the broader story of wealth inequality in Seattle's music scene. The legal aftermath proved more complex than initially expected. While Kurt's charges were relatively minor, the case opened up questions about property rights within celebrity marriages. The couple's management team, led by Danny Goldberg, initially panicked about the potential damage to both careers, but public reaction proved surprisingly positive, with many fans viewing the incident as evidence of the couple's authenticity. "We were prepared for a disaster," Goldberg recalled. "Instead, we got fan letters praising Kurt and Courtney for being real and not pretending to have a perfect relationship." Sales of both artists' music actually increased in the weeks following the arrest. MTV Unplugged recordings saw a significant spike, and Courtney's band Hole experienced renewed interest from radio programmers. The most lasting impact of the arrest may have been on Kurt and Courtney's approach to their public relationship. Prior to the incident, both had been relatively guarded in interviews, trying to maintain some privacy despite their fame. After the arrest, they became more open about the theatrical nature of their relationship. They began giving joint interviews where they would playfully argue, and they stopped pretending that their marriage was conventionally romantic. "The arrest taught us that trying to hide who we really were was pointless," Courtney told Rolling Stone months later. "People were going to find out anyway, so we might as well control the narrative." The Fisher-Price guitar that had started the entire incident was eventually retrieved from Lake Washington by a local diver who happened to be a Nirvana fan. The waterlogged toy was later displayed in Seattle's Experience Music Project Museum as part of an exhibit on music and domestic life. The bizarre arrest report, finally released after 30 years, reveals not just the details of one strange night, but a glimpse into a relationship that was as complex and unconventional as the music that made Kurt Cobain famous. It shows two people who loved each other so intensely that even their arguments became legendary. In the weeks following the incident, Kurt and Courtney received hundreds of letters from couples who said the arrest had actually helped their own relationships. Many wrote that seeing such famous people have completely irrational fights made them feel better about their own domestic disputes. "We got letters from people saying, if Kurt Cobain can throw cake at his wife and still have a good marriage, maybe we're doing okay," Courtney remembered with amusement. The arrest had inadvertently become a form of relationship therapy for their fans, proving that even the most passionate couples could survive absurd conflicts. The bizarre arrest report, finally released after 30 years, reveals not just the details of one strange night, but a glimpse into a relationship that was as complex and unconventional as the music that made Kurt Cobain famous. It shows two people who loved each other so intensely that even their arguments became legendary.